If they really believed Iran tried to assassinate the president, then we, of course, as a country, would take it upon ourselves to attack Iran. We wouldn't just say that and then just let that hang in the air for months on end, which, there was talk about that, speculation about that, whatever you want to call it, before November of last year. People were blaming that on Iran. So why'd you wait almost a year to do anything about it? It's just amazing how, as when Israel strikes, all of a sudden the panic meter gets turned up to 10, and all of a sudden this is an existential problem. Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show, everybody. Keaton, Weiss, and Russell Dobular in for Jimmy while he is touring Europe. Well, this was a special treat that came online yesterday. Ted Cruz on Iran, full interview tomorrow. So this was the teaser clip. We have a few clips that we're going to play because, of course, Tucker Carlson in Washington now interviewed Ted Cruz and did not really hold back. So here he is quizzing Ted Cruz on the population of Iran, the country that Ted Cruz would like to overthrow.
By the way, how many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah.
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
See, that's a lawyer trick that Ted Cruz just did, and Tucker kind of let him do it. Tucker should have said, well, take a guess how many people live there. Because what Cruz just says there, he says, okay, well, I mean, I don't know. I don't look at population tables. What's the difference if it's 80 million, 90 million, or 100? He's acting as if he knew it was somewhere in that range. Right? He's acting now as if he knew it was about 90. Maybe 80, maybe 100. What Tucker should have said was, take a guess how many they are, so you get him on the record. Because I have a feeling he didn't know that it was in that ballpark. I had a feeling he had no idea whatsoever, as was evidenced by his initial response. So now he tries to lawyer it like the scumbag he is. And I say, well, what's the difference? 80, 90, 100. I knew it was somewhere in that range. I wasn't that far off. I'm not totally ignorant about the country that I want to overthrow. By the way, the population of Iraq in 2002, right before we invaded, was a little over 20 million. So when people talk about why this is going to be so much worse than Iraq, that's a big part of it, is that you're just talking about a much bigger country with much more people in it, almost 4 times the population of Iraq when we went to war there over 20 years ago.
Yeah, but that went well.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So it'll only be 4 times worse than that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
As if you don't know anything about the country.
I didn't say I don't know anything about.
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay,
it's not even. You don't know anything about Iran, so
okay, I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government.
You're the one who claims
anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump. You're the one who can't figure out if it was a good idea to kill General Soleimani, and you said it was bad.
You don't believe they're trying to murder Trump.
Yes, I do.
Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation. And if you really believe that,
we're carrying out military strikes today.
You said Israel was.
Right.
What? So first of all, yes, what Tucker says there is definitely true. If they really believed Iran tried to assassinate the president, then we, of course, as a country, would take it upon ourselves to attack Iran. We wouldn't just say that and then just let that hang in the air for months on end, which, there was talk about that, speculation about that, whatever you want to call it, before November of last year. People were blaming that on Iran. So why'd you wait almost a year to do anything about it? It's just amazing how, as when Israel strikes, all of a sudden the panic meter gets turned up to 10, and all of a sudden this is an existential problem that requires immediate, urgent action, like potentially World War III.
Yeah, and once again, I will draw people's attention to the fact that they did not at all cover these assassins. Didn't cover them at all, right? And I'm not saying don't go Google it and find a name and then tell me no. You can David Hinckley. We know we still know that name, right? Mark David Chapman. These assassins. The media loves those stories, right? That's very clickbaity for them. That sells a lot of magazines. have you ever seen them so silent about who the people who tried to kill the president are? Especially Butler? Like, you heard like a couple things about this person and then silence. If that does not tell you that these were ops partly deployed for this purpose, so that now they could claim whatever, because they really did not put in front of the public who these people were. They gave them no explanation for it, really. That makes it much easier to just fill in the blank and claim whatever you want to claim about it.
Yeah, now you can just say whatever you want. All right, we'll back it up a little bit.
No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump. You're the one who can't figure out if it was a good idea to kill General Soleimani, and you said it was bad.
You don't believe they're trying to murder Trump?
Yes, I do.
Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation. And if you really believe that,
we're carrying out military strikes today.
You said Israel was.
Right, with our help. I said we. Israel is leading them, but we're supporting them.
Well, you're breaking news here, because the U.S. government last night denied, the National Security Council spokesman Alex Pfeiffer denied on behalf of Trump that we were acting on Israel's behalf in any offensive capacity.
No, we're not bombing them. Israel's bombing them.
You just said we were.
You said we were.
We are supporting
Israel.
High
stakes. You're a senator. If you're saying the United States government is at war with Iran right now, people are listening.
Okay.
Wow. Oh my God. And that was just a small
How many people live in Iran?
Sample of things. I mean, that was just a tiny sample. We will get to more in just a moment. But no, once again, Tucker is he is absolutely right. That, of course, if they really thought that Iran was behind the assassination attempt, they'd have not waited until Israel acted first. 10 months later? That was in July of last year. It was almost a year ago. It's almost an entire year. Well, we would have just let that go for a year, not really said much about it, not really done much about it. I mean, it's just so absurd. So absurd. Glenn Greenwald says it's such a uniquely Washington ethos for a senator to run around demanding the U.S. destroy and overthrow the government of a country without knowing even the most basic facts about it. Ted Cruz learns where a country is on the map when he calls for war against it, but no sooner. Exactly. Ted Cruz just said the quiet part out loud, says Brian Allen on Tucker Carlson show. Cruz casually dropped that we're already at war with Iran alongside Israel. Tucker, visibly stunned, reminded him that the White House denied U.S. involvement just last night. And then, yes, right on cue, Cruz panicked, stuttered, and began walking it all back. But of course, when it's difficult to know where Israel ends and the United States begins, what difference does it make whether you walk it back or not? The cat was out of the bag once he said that. All right, so this goes on a bit further here. This is when it gets even more confrontational. And so let's play some more of this.
Powerful country in the world. If you're calling for toppling in government, it's incumbent on you to know something about the country and to think through the consequences of that. And you haven't, and you don't. And I'm saying that's reckless.
Okay, you engage in reckless rhetoric with no facts. And to be clear,
you engage in reckless rhetoric. You're the one saying we need to overthrow
You're out
the
of
government.
bounds. I'm about to rule your perfectly reasonable statements out of bounds.
He's the one engaging in reckless rhetoric. Is he the one advocating for war? No, you're the one who's reckless rhetoric with no facts to back it up. That describes exactly what you just said, which is, we need to topple Iran. I don't know how many people live there. No, that is exactly. We talk about projection.
Yeah, he's the one demanding that you demonstrate the most basic knowledge of the country that you want to. It's not just about bombing it. Clearly, their objective is to overthrow the government.
Right.
So this you really, it is really incumbent on you to know something about how that would play out. To know how that would play out, you need to know something about the country.
Yes, absolutely.
You engage in reckless rhetoric with no facts. And to be clear,
I'm not calling for the overthrow of a government. You
put out a newsletter attacking Donald Trump and calling him complicit.
I'm not attacking Donald Trump.
Yes, you have. And by the way,
I campaigned for Donald Trump.
Okay, yes.
And this is after anti-Semitism, this is the last refuge. You're an anti-Semite and you hate Trump.
Okay,
I love Trump.
I will read. You put out a whole newsletter saying Trump has abandoned America first. And here's what Trump said in response.
How pathetic is this? Like, this is why Ted Cruz is such a hated man. He's widely hated in Washington by both parties, not just the Democrats who hate him. If you remember John Boehner, when he left the speakership, he said Ted Cruz is the most miserable son of a bitch he'd ever met in his life. You had that guy, Peter King, the congressman from Long Island, who during the primaries in 2016, he backed Trump, and he would have been a never Cruz had Cruz won the nomination. They said, if Cruz wins the nomination, will you vote for him? He says, I'd rather drink cyanide. Yeah, this guy is just like very, very reviled.
It's
by
very
his colleagues, and it shows you here. I mean, he just is a miserable bastard in ways that like transcend whatever your politics are. I remember Al Franken. I tweeted this out today. Al Franken gave a really great quote. I mean, he's a scumbag himself, but he is funny. He tells the interviewers on The View, he says, I actually like Ted Cruz more than most of my colleagues like Ted Cruz, and I hate Ted Cruz. So, everybody hates this guy, which explains why he sat down with Tucker Carlson. He's the one who's arrogant enough and enough of an asshole to think that, I can go toe-to-toe with Tucker Carlson for 2 hours on this war of aggression that nobody in America wants. He's a guy who's used to being absolutely despised. And this is a perfect example of why no one can stand to be around him, even people on his political side.
Yeah, it's very weird when people like this, who clearly are repulsive and cringe and off-putting, get this far in politics.
Yeah, how you get? Yeah, exactly.
It's very weird. Like DeSantis, like supposedly that was not just smearing from the Trump people. Supposedly he is a weird, unsociable, off-putting guy. How do you become governor? How do you do that? Because you got to get people to give you money. You got to do a lot of glad handing, the way our system works.
Texas is a huge
perhaps
state.
More than any other on earth. You have to be able to really get people to want to write you checks. How do you do that with that kind of personality?
Yeah, no, especially like Texas is a huge state. Second most populous state in the union. You need a lot of votes to get elected in Texas. Who could walk into a voting booth and vote for this man? Who?
It's very strange.
It is bizarre.
Response. Well, considering that I'm the one that developed America First, and considering that the term wasn't used until I came along, I think I'm the one who decides that. For those people who say they want peace, you can't have peace if Iran has a nuclear weapon. So for all of those wonderful people who don't want to do anything about Iran having a nuclear weapon, that's not peace. That was directed at you.
Man, you got me.
You got
Busted.
me. Busted. No, exactly. Like, it is so unbelievably juvenile to, in response to what Tucker just said, read a newsletter where he very meekly, by the way, criticized Donald Trump as some sort of gotcha, as if that belongs in the same conversation as agitating for World War III. It shows you what a cult Ted Cruz thinks MAGA is. Like, he thinks it's a cult. Now, I know most of MAGA
what he
is
read
against
actually
this.
did not play well with them.
Right.
I
Exactly.
I decide what America First is.
Right. So what I'm saying is, the polling data suggests most of MAGA doesn't want this war. Ted Cruz feels like the best play he could make is to appeal to what he views as the cult of MAGA. Well, you crossed the dear leader. Ha ha.
Right.
It's a smoking gun. And so it's up to you, MAGA, if you're going to stand for that. I mean, this is really a line in the sand. This is why we've been covering on our show a lot, how this has really driven a wedge through the MAGA coalition, perhaps irreparably, because if you have principles, you have to take a side, and there's just no question which side to land on here. But Ted Cruz thinks that that's a major own, and Tucker kind of mocks him a little bit for it. All right, we'll let this go a little more.
I'm just saying.
Look, my views. Look, I like Trump. I campaigned for Trump. I know Trump. I talked to him last night.
Oh, you talked to him last night? What did you say? Did you say don't do this? Because that would have been a good thing to get in. Yeah.
I would imagine he did.
All right. Well, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Knock on wood.
Trump, and you know that.
But you're against his foreign policy.
I think that we should be very careful about entering into more foreign wars that don't help us when our country is dying.
When you say
and our
don't
country
help
is
us,
dying.
Look, yes, focus on our country. I'm all for it. But the naivete.
But Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. Is it like it went from "Make America Great Again" to Iran can't have a nuclear weapon? That's the Donald Trump mantra now. Is talking about Iran all of a sudden because Israel started bombing them. They can't have a nuclear weapon. They can't. That's the line. They're amidst negotiation talks.
Tucker, you know as well as I do, Donald can get Miriam with the 6-inch strap on or the 15 inches? Do you want him to get the 15 inches, Tucker? Is that what you want?
That would make you a traitor.
You don't even know how much money this costs. You don't know anything about the country whose government you want to overthrow, and you're calling me reckless.
I want to stop a lunatic who wants to murder us from getting nuclear weapons that could kill millions of Americans.
Oh, my God.
You say, I can't see how that benefits America in any way. That is bizarre. And by the way,
bizarre.
Isolationism, you're for...
What's bizarre is that all of the sudden, a year after they supposedly were behind the assassination attempt, this is an immediate life or death emergency. Like, that should be the tell, folks. Don't you understand? Like, where was this urgency until Israel bombed? Israel was the one who, amidst negotiations and talks, decided, you know what? We're going in. We're bombing. That wasn't a decision the United States came to officially, right? That was what Israel did. So according to what Ted Cruz would have you think, Israel jumped the gun, they bombed, and all of a sudden now we have to be so afraid that Iran is going to try and kill us all. Yep. All of a sudden. What about the last year?
Because of assassins that have been uniquely invisibilized.
Yeah, for a year.
Singularly.
Yeah.
I challenge you to find one other case in history where people attempted assassinations of the president where they were that invisible from news coverage.
Yep.
Policy is the foreign policy of Jimmy Carter and Barack Obama.
Oh, absolutely.
And it doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm a big leftist. This is so silly. I'm Jimmy Carter and Barack Obama. Okay. Let me just say one last thing.
So how is your foreign policy different from Jimmy Carter's? Seriously.
Please.
But I asked that question seriously.
I don't even know what you're talking about. Jimmy Carter?
So
what century is this? I am the product of the last 25 years, watching carefully, being involved in the periphery, and I see an unending string of foreign policy disasters that have impoverished and hurt our country.
Unending string.
Unending string. They would include Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, and our inability to stop the Houthis, by the way, in Yemen, which exposes us as weak, and I grieve over that. So these are failures. You helped preside over some of them as a member of the Senate.
What failures, foreign policy failures, have I presided over?
Well, we were unable to beat Russia in the war that you supported against Russia.
Well, that's the thing. You didn't mention Ukraine in that list, but you talk about continuity. I mean, Ukraine was February of 2022. The Afghanistan pullout was August 2021. So you're talking about literally a continuous string, just about.
You've been spending the last 3 years telling us that Vladimir Putin is evil and we're going to beat him with other people's children, and 1 million of those kids are now dead. You've never apologized for that. That was a full failure.
By the way, look, the level of number of falsehoods you lay out just in one statement are rather.
You haven't supported the war against Russia?
Are rather stunning. So the war against Russia was caused, which I have explained at great detail, by Joe Biden's weakness.
But you supported the war.
If you want to talk, we can talk Russia and Ukraine. I'm happy to talk about it.
Oh, God.
Do you think that's been a success?
No, it's been an absolute disaster.
Okay, but you supported it. Shouldn't you apologize?
No, you should apologize. I'm not going to engage in the demanding of apologies. So I'm going to
apologize. Hey, you should apologize.
Wow.
I mean, what a miserable bastard.
I have got to. We've been very busy because we're doing one show after another. I've got to watch the whole interview.
Yeah, it's 2 hours.
I don't know. I don't want to jump on your segment. Do you have because Ted Cruz tweeted out something about how?
Oh yeah, no, I don't have
out of context, and it was before the whole thing dropped. And he said a clip has been seen out of context.
Well, no, the clip
interview.
that's out of context.
Yeah,
well,
he seemed to think that he was going to be vindicated by the whole interview.
Yeah, the clip that was supposedly taken out of context was when Ted Cruz talks about the Bible, which is not my area of expertise. Obviously, you guys will have to go to Candace Owens' channel to get the truth on that. That's outside my purview. But this is.
I heard about it though.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah, sounds good. A lot of people seem to like it. Ted Cruz, recipient of $1.9 million APAC dollars. That is a whole lot of explanation.
Lizard
for
man.
that. Yes. Craig Mokabir says the U.S. provided the Israeli regime with the green light for its surprise attack on Iran, the distraction of feigned peace talks to facilitate the attack, U.S. tax dollars to finance the operation, the intelligence for targeting, the weapons and ammunition for killing, the diplomatic cover to protect it from Security Council action, U.S. forces to intercept the Iranian response, the promise of direct U.S. military backing if Israel requires it, and now appears poised to join the Israeli regime in offensive operations. Once again, the U.S. is a co-perpetrator in Israel's crimes, and corrupt U.S. politicians and media corporations have dusted off the old WMD's ruse to push the U.S. into war for the Israeli regime. After Israeli impunity, the biggest threat to international peace and security is American ignorance. Amen. Amen. And Ted Cruz fed all of that right there. He gave you they want to kill us all. So what are you, crazy for defying Donald Trump's, what oddly enough, neocon foreign policy strategy at this moment? And not only that, but as Craig says earlier in this tweet, as he references, he spilled the beans that, yeah, we're involved. Well, what do you mean we? Well, I mean Israel, but I thought Israel and the United States are different entities. Yeah, well, I mean, we're backing Israel. So, it's just so obvious who instigated this. And, you know, as much as, knock on wood, polling seems to indicate at this moment that the overwhelming majority of Americans are against this or unsure. So the latest polling shows 60% of Americans oppose U.S. intervention in Iran, 16% favor it, and the rest are unsure. And what we need to do right now is we need to make sure that all of the rest of those people who are unsure get their mind right and say no. Because the propaganda blitz in these coming days and weeks is going to be just absolutely relentless. For anyone who lived through the post 9/11 Iraq march to war, you know what I'm talking about. For those who are too young or too unengaged to know what I'm talking about, go learn what I'm talking about. You know, go on YouTube, search for, you know, whatever, Sean Hannity, Bill O'Reilly, whoever the CNN guys were back then. I don't even know, because that's what kind of impression CNN makes on people. Go back and look at some of that media coverage just to educate yourself as to like the lengths that these people will go to just convince the public that, yeah, ignorance is bliss, freedom is slavery, war is peace, up is down, left is right. It's pretty extraordinary what they will do. And crazy as it may sound to some of you, it does work on people. It does work on people, which is why the task is so urgent that we, A, remind people of what a mistake that was, what the disastrous consequences of that were, and warn people that, yes, because Iran, you know, whether Ted Cruz knows it or not, is a country with almost 4 times the population of pre-war Iraq in 2002. So the consequences of this will be much, much worse, and it's imperative that we stop this from happening. We just have to stop this from happening. Some Democrats, as well as Thomas Massey in the House, have created a war powers bill that would require a congressional vote. You need to call your senator and your congressperson and urge them to vote yes on that. It's all hands on deck, because if you've been politically awake for the last 20 years, this right now is what you've been fearing. This was the big disaster event that we just couldn't have happen. And now it's looking pretty likely it's going to happen in pretty short time. And so it's all hands on deck to try and stop this.
Yeah. The real difference right now is it's a different country. This propaganda does work on some people. It always will. It's not going to work on most people, not this time. There's been a lot of water under the bridge since 9/11. You have a president who is uniquely despised by the Democrats and people on the left, like much more so than George Bush. They hated George Bush But this is a completely different order of magnitude of hate. It's a different country. Like, you just didn't even have within the bounds of, normal politics, the concept of hatred for a president at that time that you have for Donald Trump.
Right, sure.
And MAGA is the anti-war faction of the United States political spectrum. They're probably the most anti-war, collectively, the most anti-war portion of the voting public, of the regularly voting public, of the people who really go into a voting booth and vote. There's nobody really to propagandize with this stuff other than people in nursing homes watching CNN. Like,
Yes.
it's not going to work on most people. So I think it's less a question of seeing the war fever that they were able to whip up about going into Iraq than it's a question of, do they care that they're not going to be able to move the needle much above the 16% support that they have now? Do they care? Because I don't think you get that above 22. I don't care what kind of propaganda you do. So do they go ahead anyway? Especially when the people who are going to be most against it are Trump's base. Does he go ahead and do this? Does he completely just light all of his political capital on fire that way at once? And the bigger question is, does he even have a choice? Because it's pretty obvious he's a Zionist puppet. And this isn't a mask-off moment. It was obvious before he came into office. It was obvious through what he said. We kept showing that clip.
It was obvious in his first term.
Sure, it was obvious his first term was obvious. We kept showing that clip of him dancing around in front of the Israeli flags, bragging about how Sheldon Adelson would crack the whip, and he bragged about how fast he got things done for Sheldon Adelson. And then look at who he appointed. So anyone who's like, I didn't realize he was like this, come on, man, come on. It was very obvious he was going to be like this. Now that we're here, he does care about being adored. And that's probably why he looks so tired and beaten when you see him now in front of the cameras, because he knows that the forces that really control him are about to destroy his bond to his base.
Yeah, and I think what also should be communicated from that base, and I know that some people are not going to agree with this because there are some people who still want to find the positives in this administration, but if you really want to maximize leverage against the war with Iran, you got to make clear that if you do this, we're not supporting any of your other program. None.
Right.
Even the immigration, which I know a lot of you guys care a lot about in the MAGA base. Sometimes you have to raise the stakes, right? Sometimes you have to call a bet and raise them. And so you have to say, not only will we not back you on this Iran play, we're also not going to be there for you when it comes to the deportations, when it comes to the ICE raids and all the other parts of the MAGA agenda, the tariffs. I mean, I'm not really sure why anybody would be in support of these tariffs at this point in the game, but whatever. People can see things differently, I suppose. But you have to use maximum leverage here and just say, look, if you do this, we are out. We are not going to support any other effort of this administration. And, that can lead to a pretty hopeless place if you lose. But I don't know how else to describe this as just a very existential moment. The stakes are really and truly that high. High. Look, these mass deportations are not going to put more money in American workers' pockets anyway. That's why Donald Trump was talking about, the hotel businesses are upset about this and the farmers, and then he walked it back because the base is pissed about the Iran thing, so he had to throw them some red meat and say, all right, we'll do the deportations again. Lutnick is talking about using AI to replace a lot of the jobs. So there's not going to be an economic payoff to these deportations under any circumstance. A war with Iran, do you know what that's going to do to this economy here if there is a war with Iran?
Oil, man.
Yeah.
Oil.
I mean, come on. So what are you talking about?
How are you going to heat your house? How are you going to drive your car?
Right. At that point, a Haitian migrant taking your job at the denim factory and eating your cat's tail, it's going to be neither here nor there. It's not going to matter. It's not going to matter either way. This is what I mean. Like, you just got to go all in to stop this war, because
by the time this is over,
if
you're
this
going to be
happens, nothing else matters. If this happens, nothing else is going to really matter. I mean, this is just going to dominate your life in just about every way it possibly can.
Yeah.
So you just
World
have
War
to make it
III
clear
will
to
do
Trump,
that.
hey, we're not, if you do this, whoever calls us and asks, do you support Donald Trump? Yes or no? We're saying no. Do you support deportations? No. Do you support anything else on the agenda? No. You have to make it clear. If you do this, we're abandoning you. We are abandoning you wholesale. And that's really the only way to handle it. If you are a member of his base whose opinion of him he values, that's got to be the message. You got to go all in to try and stop this, because I'm telling you right now, this is going to be very, very, very bad if it goes the wrong way.
Come see us on tour in Glasgow, Manchester, Belfast, Dublin, Liverpool, Birmingham, and London. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.